everybody. So excited you're here. Welcome to our employee experience webinar, live stream, wherever you're watching, whether it be YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or right here in our own little, webinar space. We're so glad you're here. I'm Crystal Wiese. I'm the Director of Marketing here at QuestionPro. And today is an epic day, you guys. We are joined by not only Sanja Licina, PhD, but also the COO of the QuestionPro, his first webinar with us in 6 years, because that's how long I've worked here, Erik Koto. And I am stoked, you guys, stoked. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and the weather today is, it's hot, guys. It's summer. It's going to be hot all summer. But Sanja, you are somewhere else where it might be a little cooler.
I know. For those of you who don't know me, I'm actually in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And you know what? Like 99% of the time, it's beautiful here. I lived in London before. I lived in Chicago. I lived in Michigan, Belgrade, all over the place. And Buenos Aires wins for it's a beautiful sunny skies for sure.
I love that. And Erik, where are you in the world?
Where am I? I am on the West Coast. I'm in Bend, Oregon, on a beautiful Bend, Oregon, where I've been for many years. I started with QuestionPro many years ago in Seattle. Back in 2011-ish. And as you mentioned, Crystal, yes, I used to do many, many different things over the years. Webinars were one of them, but they've fallen off my map over the last 6 years. So thank you for welcoming me back to the big screen here.
Yes, this has been like a secret cabal of mine for many, many years. I have all these like long cons on Erik. That's how we got like QuestionPro Man was like a 3-year long con. Getting Erik on a webinar. That's been a 6-year long. But today, the reason we're here is to talk about how you can do employee surveys, how we do employee surveys as kind of a smaller company doing the best we can. And right now, I think, the best reason the three of us are here is because we represent all pieces of the company, right? We've got me. I'm an employee, and I'm a proud employee. Sanja helps run our employee experience programming, and then Erik, he funds the employee experience program. So if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. We've got a packed agenda for you today, and we're pretty excited to get started. Let me go through here. Okay, you know who we are. We're going to skip this one. And then Erik, with all his years of experience, is going to tell us who we are and what, why we matter to you and how you can get to know us better.
All right. Well, thank you, Crystal. Yes. Who is QuestionPro? Who are we? We're a software company. We develop survey software and feedback applications. And essentially our mission is to help companies listen. To listen, to act, and improve on what they do. How do they drive change throughout the organization through the data you get from listening, either qualitative feedback or quantitative survey-based feedback. Been at it a long time. We've been doing this since 2005. We're all over the world, and we do have 350 plus employees. So we have real data on our own internal operations, which is what we're going to talk about today. But chiefly, we focus in 3 verticals. Market research is what we've been doing the longest. That's in the research space, understanding what customers think, want, need. The customer experience space is real-time feedback about an experience you may have had and acting on that data and operationalizing that data throughout an organization. And then lastly, employee experience, what we're talking about today, listening to your employees. How do you understand what your employees are thinking and feeling, and how do you act on that to make a better company?
Erik,
yes.
How many employees were here when you started?
16. 16. Yeah.
What?
I know I was not number 1, but I was pretty darn close. So
does that, we can talk about this as we go forward, but do you feel like not only pride that we're now 400 people, but is that eerie almost? Now there's tons of people here that you don't know.
No. It's super cool. But I think actually one of the news things is some of the 16 people are still around, and obviously we've had, like any organization, we've had employee churn and turnover, but some of those folks who are kind of just on the front lines on account management or inbound sales are now helping us run the company. So I'm really actually probably most proud of that is, of course we're 350 and we're pushing that number up every day, but a lot of those folks I started with are still here in bigger and better roles.
And then you got to bring in treats like me and Sanja.
Yes, and of course, the wealth of amazing new people.
I love that. That's crazy. I know. I remember there was like 150 when I started.
Yeah.
Like, and that was even crazy to think now that we're past that. But that's a little bit about QuestionPro. So, Sanja,
I will take it from here.
If you guys don't know Sanja, she is a brilliant mind, or a PhD in organizational psychology. She kind of came in to run our employee experience software, but then also is able to help us program our own internal surveys over the years that we have done them. And we're going to kind of talk about how we approach our survey insights. And I'm just here to add that employee the vibes.
No, you've been so great with that because it is really a holistic experience. And to me, one is, as Crystal was mentioning, my primary day job is I run our employee experience business unit, which is everything from product development and how we take it to market and working with our customers. But what's always been really important to me in my role is that I don't imagine like rainbows and unicorns and these perfect idealistic scenarios that don't exist in the world, because I would make no friends that way. I would go to our customers and say, do these amazing things with data. And they were like, oh, Sanja, come on. Like, what reality do you live in? And so to me, in addition to talking with our customers on a daily basis, one of the things that really keeps me grounded and inspired to innovate and think about different ways to use data is to not run our own employee survey program. And so every year we get together and we think about what's important, most important to us as an organization. How do we want to approach this? And then one of the things that we know from us personally and also from our customers is that a lot of times the toughest part is really taking meaningful action on your data, making sure that the executive leadership hears you, that they're making an investment, and then that you're actually pulling through those insights. And definitely over the years, we've iterated on that, had a lot of learnings. And so that's why this year we wanted to get together, the three of us, because the way that our employee survey cycle, especially our annual employee survey cycle works, is that I'm the one that runs the questions, runs the analysis, tells the story. But then I go to Erik. I say, hey, Erik. And I go to our CEO, Vivek, and I say, hey, here's what I see in the data. Here's some of my recommendations, but what would you do? And so we've been doing this for quite a while together now, this exercise. And then Crystal's here because to me, it's always been very eye-opening to hear, and particularly her perspective, our other employee perspective too, but Crystal is she's very open. She's very candid in sharing her opinions, both the great ones and maybe the tougher ones. But to say like, maybe there are some things where I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like we fell flat on this. And even without, maybe not saying that, Crystal would say like, wow, I thought you guys did a really good job on this, or this was really well received. And I think, okay, that's really good to know. And so for us, it's really being able to close that loop and understanding we always have the best intentions, but are those best intentions right? How are they landing with our employees? And so in addition to doing surveys on that, really having these conversations and having our, some of our most important employees give us that kind of feedback is really important in creating good programs. So
all I heard was most important employees, and I was like, that's me.
And we're recording this, so if you want to send it to like your mom and dad and your siblings.
No, 10 out of 10. Shout out to my family who watches all of our live streams and are always like trolling me in our family group chat why this is happening. I know they're there. Don't.
Well, Crystal's the best family.
But not to get us off track. So we do align to these kind of goals that you're talking about, right? We kind of, let me get this slide going.
Yeah.
How do we align to these kind of like
findings? Absolutely. So we've done, like I was mentioning, over the years, different kinds of analysis, and we have a framework, and we look at 10 different categories. And one of the questions our clients ask us a lot is like, okay, so if we create these categories, but like, can I mix and match them later? Or like, is this set in stone? And how do I look at it? And absolutely, because everything with the data is to make sure you ask the questions that are most important to your culture, that you ask them in such a way that your employees understand what you're asking so they can give you as honest answers as possible. and then taking that information back and saying, okay, what are the highlights here? Now, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that it is really important when you present the data back to understand what's important to your executive leadership, and not only what's important, but how are they thinking about it? So they're keywords like performance, retention, and well-being that I actually heard our CEO say in one of our meetings, that those are today in the culture 3 key pillars for him: performance, retention, and well-being. Now you might be saying, well, Sanja, that's not really rocket science. It's not, but they're not the only 3 things an organization can focus on. And also maybe there's different ways to say them as well. So for me, even those literal terms and how he expressed what he was thinking was important when I went back and I presented it to Erik and Vivek, to be able to use that, because then he would know he's being heard, and he would also know the information that I'm sharing back is actually relevant to the way that he thinks about the culture as well.
So I think what's like really interesting here, and you mentioned earlier, is like the data has to be very consistent over the years. We don't change our employee survey every year. We don't rewrite it. There's a real like key to consistency, but you also need the flexibility on top of it, because when we first started running the employee survey, these were not the 3 key pillars being given by the CEO, right? And so we need to adapt to what is the current wish from management, as well as maintain consistency, so we have the longitudinal data over time. And I think that's one of the keys here, is that you have consistency and flexibility, which is not always easy to achieve with data.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Erik. And that is something that I remember us talking about quite a bit. And that's the nice thing when you look at different items, to be able to say like, hey, what served me in the past, and what's maybe not. So let's not maybe ask it again, or let's take a break if we've not acted on it. And then also there's something interesting. There's way like internal cultural language in a way that we talk about things, and the flexibility to maybe even tweak some questions that make it more aligned with our own culture. And so to be able to do that, again, because to me, a lot of the testing that we do with the questions and that we did when we created the framework is to make sure that people we're asking the question to actually understand what the question is. Because HR jargon doesn't always translate to every other department. And literally the first, like when we were creating the framework, the first scale was like, I completely understand the question, to I don't understand the question at all. It wasn't even the agreement to the scale. It was like, how well do you understand it? And there were items people just didn't get. And to your earlier point, like we're a global company. Our internal language is English, but we'd be foolish to assume that everybody understands everything equally. So sometimes, like, especially if you have some like colloquial sayings or something, like people might be like, I have no idea what that means. So being able to do double clicks on that at the beginning of the process really makes a big difference. And then it allows you to go through and create these different stories that are relevant to you. And maybe in 6 months, we'll run this again, and maybe some of it will change, but at least now we know what our North Star for the year is, how we want to go into it. And then if we want to add or subtract something, we can, because we have the flexibility to do that if our circumstances change. Maybe all of a sudden we're doing amazing with retention and nobody's leaving, but we still want to amp up performance, so we could focus on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did not know that we did that with our first survey. I probably took it, but I probably didn't pay attention. So let's dive into some of the data. And again, if you guys have any questions for our panel of amazing people, I'm putting myself on the panel too. If you have any questions for, how do you like build out that framework, Sanja's can, connect with Sanja on LinkedIn afterwards. Or if you have questions like, how do I get the boss to pay for it? Ask Sanja again, and then she'll tell you what Erik says. Or put your questions in the comments, and Guille, our producer in the background, will take them and we'll get back to you after the webinar with them. So let's dive into the data. And remember, we're a regular company, guys, doing regular good things. Like we're not Apple, we're not Google, we don't have unlimited resources. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. And I think some of that comes out really well. Like we all love working together, as you can see here.
Yes. So those are some of the things we wanted to highlight. So one of the ways I used to analyze the data when I first started at QuestionPro is looking at like, hey, what items did we score the highest in? What items did we score the lowest in? What do we celebrate? Where are opportunities to improve? And that was a pretty good first approach. But what I realized is that sometimes the areas that we didn't do as well in, people actually didn't care as much about, or they didn't impact these pillars as much as some other items. And so one of the things that we did this year slightly differently is that we went driver analysis first. We looked at the items that related to performance, to retention, to well-being. And out of those items that had the highest correlations, we picked those out and we said, where do we do the best and where do we have the greatest opportunity? Now, as you're looking at these slides, we color coded in QuestionPro color palette, where the dark blue ones are actually the areas where we feel like we do pretty well, or above 75% or agreement. And the areas that are in light blue are areas where we said, these are things that we need to lean in and see how to improve. Some of them you'll see we'll talk about some action items that we're taking. And some of them we're gonna dig into a little bit more to see, because maybe it's not a quick fix and it's not something that an immediate initiative can do a complete 180, but it is definitely a place where we can get started. So Crystal, I know that a couple of months ago we shared this on the company town hall, and I'm wondering from your perspective as somebody that's seeing this, like, what jumped out at you? Did something surprise you? Did something like pleasantly or unpleasantly surprise you in this data?
I mean, for me, it's like, I think that at the end of the day, sometimes you might not like what you're doing that day. Like, marketing can get really repetitive. Like, we do webinars every month, guys. Like, they're not always going to be like the most exciting thing, but at least the people you're doing them with, like, I enjoy my coworkers, so I get to do a fun webinar with my coworkers. It makes that, like, that's awesome. Like, yeah, sometimes your meeting in your work is going to be like, I got to do the webinar today, but at least the people I'm showing up with, I really, really enjoy. And like 92% of almost 400 people enjoy everyone they work with. Like, that's crazy. I think anything, you always hear like horror stories about employee surveys, right? Like, so I'm always like, anything over 50%, I feel like we're killing it. Great job, guys. Erik, but you've seen these year over year. Have you seen, like, do we like each other more than we used to?
I think in an odd way, I think COVID helped with some of these scores, because we really did focus on, how do we communicate asynchronously? How do we communicate remotely? Until then, we'd been in offices a lot. And our growth post-COVID has largely been out of office in remote. And so I think we got better at that in some ways. And we've tried, very consciously to reduce some of the finger pointing and blame that really results in negative scores here. Right. And I think and particularly, Vivek as the CEO has very directly addressed the kind of concepts of blame and finger pointing is corrosive and just counterproductive. And so I think we do see some of that that's helped with these scores. So there's direct actions behind a lot of these that I think have helped.
Yeah. And I echoed Erik. I love hearing that. That's often addressed in our management meetings. Like, we have challenges like any other organization, but the way we approach it is not to point fingers. And I think, to me, having worked for a number of different organizations, one of the things that I also, particularly as a business unit owner, appreciate is the relationship with sales as well, because sales always has so much pressure. And it's so easy when somebody is not meeting their numbers, all of a sudden the fingers go. And here I feel that really true sense of collaboration. And also, I love that I see it at every level. And our survey data says it. Our conversations and focus groups after that do as well. I know one of the numbers we were talking about is 90% of employees can count on their colleagues to help them. To me, that's incredible for a number of reasons. But one, all of us are so incredibly busy with our own things that we're doing day to day. And so to me, it's really something to pause and celebrate the fact that people will stop their day and help their colleague to make sure they also advance. That they're not like, hey, like, I'm too busy, I can't help you with this. Because while we continue to focus on like operational things and product and things that take a while, these ways that people really show up to each other have an immediate positive impact, not only in the relationships, but really in the business as a whole. And that's our people. And so that to us was really a moment. I would, for any of you listening, I would say take those moments and celebrate your employees, because these are some quantifiable here, but sometimes like not tangible things that make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And oftentimes as humans, we can just until something breaks, we overlook things that are going well. And we don't do that. Don't do that. Take a moment to celebrate these things, especially because it is your employees that are the pillars of your organization. So just wanted to take some time.
Erik will always tease and say, because I love small talk. I can be the small talk queen. And he's like, I know every call is going to start with Crystal telling me like one thing about her life that I probably don't care that much about. But I also tell that to people as we are in that remote culture. Every onboarding I do, I say, guys, there is going to be a day when you're going to have to call someone that is in a different time zone, a different like life cycle than you, maybe on a different product line. And yes, it's their job to help you, but how willing they are to go out of their way to help you is going to have that kind of emotional connection or that friendship. So like just spend the 2 minutes getting to know people across the org. You reach out to people on Slack you don't know to set up, like a share of meme or a video or, chat with them on Instagram. Like get to know people, because at the end of the day, someone's going to have to help you do something that is not their job. Mm-hmm. And that is really going to take, you better hope they like you.
No, it's true. I never do an interview or an onboarding call without asking someone what they do for fun. A simple question. What do you do for fun? If you need a one-liner that gets you there, what do you do for fun? Every interview, literally every interview I do, every onboarding
I love
call.
that.
Yeah.
It takes a lot working remote to get these. I think also like helps with this. Like there's a lot of remote companies that feel disconnected. Yep. And we've done a really good job. Great job, leaders.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
So before we
sorry.
So one of the things, oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say one of the things that I could highlight it in this slide that was interesting, even on the performance slide that we saw as a driver, was a sense of belonging. And so for us, even with these like good relationship scores, that's the one. And Crystal, to your point, you're like, anything over 50 is good. And I'm like, 76 or like bad.
Wait, you want me to go back?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
One thing that I was just going to say in here is that like if you can go back to the next slide, is that's something that like we consistently saw a sense of belonging impacting each one of the 3 pillars. Mm-hmm. So during the time that maybe organizations are saying, hey, like in DEIB, what's really important, whatever your stance on it, in our data, we saw that was one of the key drivers across the board. So just wanted to highlight that in a sense of like, okay, where do we go with that next? So one other thing that we looked at is what makes us want to stay, right? So the first one is performance. So I'm in the role. Do I have the things that I need to do to perform? How can I do better as a people that help me, as a technology that helps me, etc. But retention is such a big thing, because even during the time that unfortunately we're seeing so many organizations doing layoffs, and you would think like, oh, but aren't we in a time that people feel so fortunate that they have a job and they wouldn't look? No, because really good people are always going to have an option. And so I would tell you that if you're maybe lucky enough that retention is not a challenge in your organization, don't take it for granted because of market conditions, because good people will always be approached. They will always have options. And so to really understand what it is that people want, and the reason they would stay and what's a challenge to them is as critical today, I would say, as any other time in the market. Now, Erik, I'd love to pull you in this conversation, because one of the things that we had talked about was even internal mobility at QuestionPro, and what can we do? Like, we're around 400 employees, but we're also geographically dispersed. We have a lot of different business units. And so one of the things that we talked about that we'll touch on later in some of our actions is, does career advancement mean learning and getting better at your job? Does that mean, advancing into being a manager or a senior developer? And in a way, like understanding what we can promise to our employees and staying true to that promise. So I don't know, like, I know you and I talked about this quite a bit. If there are a couple of things that you want to highlight as kind of a net from that conversation.
Right. No, I mean, it's a good question. A lot of companies our size have this problem. We're a relatively flat organization, right? Yeah. We're not a company that has 12 different tiers of managers or levels of employees. So it is hard to offer promotions. in a smaller company, right? If your boss is in that seat, there's probably not another seat. And there's not many tiers in between our executives and our folks who are, on the front line. So that's a challenge, and it's a structural challenge. It's very hard to change that. We can't come out of this employee survey and say, well, let's add 3 more layers of middle managers. It's just not a reasonable action in our minds. So how we address that, a couple different ways. First and foremost, we just had to do a better job of listening and understanding what people wanted. I think we didn't have the structure of many, many layers to move people through, but we also weren't doing a good job listening to our employees. There was no structural way the company had put in place for managers to listen to employees or employees to have their voice heard with the manager. So we implemented a career management software, which you might argue we should have done before, but it was a direct outcome of the employee survey. And so I think that's one, is just getting better at listening so that when opportunities do present themselves, the managers are aware. And even if opportunities don't present themselves, just sometimes having your voice heard makes a difference. I can tell you even that with me and the CEO, just the fact that I'm able to express what I want is meaningful, even if I'm never going to get his job. So, I think
you already had it once.
Yeah, I had it once. So no, but I'm tongue in cheek, but I do really mean that, being able to listen. I think the other thing is culturally, we just look for opportunities for people to take ownership. Right. This is not about, levels in promotion and formal kind of tiers. It's like, hey, you want to build some skills, you want to be able to go build your career. We are very, very open and flexible in terms of if you have an idea, come to us and we'll let you pursue it. I don't think anyone would ever say, I'm not allowed to pursue what I want to do here. We've made a real kind of a cultural movement towards allowing people the flexibility. And that's maybe a structural advantage of a smaller company. Structural disadvantage of a smaller company is we don't have many tiers of management. Structural advantage is we have a lot of opportunities and we can take the risk to allow people to go and pursue a career advancement that they want. So it's a tough one to solve. I think, we have gotten data out of this. It's helped us at least move in the right direction.
Yeah. And there's no necessarily perfect answer. It's just advancing and, again, doing the best that you can with information you have, continuing to ask employees, trying different things. You said a lot of really good things. I wanted to quickly double click on one because it really stood out to me. And I think maybe it'll be good for our listeners to hear again. You talked about the performance management platform, and you said maybe you would argue it's something we should have done before. If any of you hear that, and if any of you are in that position, don't beat yourself up. There are a lot of things that organizations would be doing, us as humans would be doing. God, the lists are endless of best practices, things to do. The thing is, none of us are doing everything. And even if you're not doing something that you feel like, but this is one-on-one, I'm almost embarrassed to think that, trust me, you're not alone. We actually ran even a market research survey and found out that overall, only about half of organizations even survey their employees. My little heart broke in half because I thought that was table
Sanja was sad for a week.
I did not know what to do with the data. I'm still a little sad, but it's the reality and how eye-opening that was. And I got it. And it was companies of different sizes. I don't want you to think oh yeah, but if you have 10 employees, you really, no. This was companies 10, 20, 100,000 employees. Not everybody does certain things. And so don't let that keep you from looking at some of the basic things and saying hey, even though I thought this was table stakes and we're not doing it yet, it's never too late to start. And so with all the pride, with all the sense of hey, we're finally now we're getting to build this foundation and now is the right time. I just wanted to mention that because I've had so many moments in my life, like I was mentioning, where I would have this surprise and I think, I would think things were different. They're not. So if you have some basic things that you need to do, I would encourage you to do them as soon as possible, but do it with all the passion, all the pride, that you're really making a positive impact on your people. So I just wanted to pause on that one because I'm learning and growing as an IO psychologist to understand our realities and making the best of them. So Just wanted to
Oh, that is an
that.
excellent point.
One, yay us, we're doing the survey. And you can too, because you can sign up for QuestionPro. At the end of the day, I also, like, from my perspective, this is going to sound so funny, but like, I think about it like my parents. They did the best they could with the information and how they were when they were raising me. Now we're all in therapy, which is great. But like, you know, they did the best they could with the information they had. Like, it's like any 90s parents, right? Like, the millennials are watching this. They know. If you know, you know. But, you know, like, if you don't send out the survey, you can't do the best you have with the information you have. And so Erik says this thing, and it's like weird that he's here because usually I tell anecdotes about Erik when he's not here, is like, if you're going to come with like, how can I make this better? We can all complain and moan about, oh, they don't do anything with the data and we don't take our surveys and we don't take surveys. Well, like, how can you come to if you're going to complain that much, how do you approach it with, how can I make this better? And that's kind of what I think about when I see some of this like information in our surveys is like, how can I make people feel more inclusive? How can I make people feel like they could advance their career here? How can I make people feel like they're more transparent and honest? I mean, I'm a fairly transparent and honest person, probably too much, but here we are.
Never. So I think that's such a good point. And if you flip to the next slide for well-being, I would say that that's probably an area that, to me, also interestingly, is the one that's almost like most open to interpretation for different people. And what do people need? And so when you were saying like the different challenges, and I think, you know, for us, like one of the biggest challenges is we are a global company and we're not huge. And so how do you manage time zones? How do you manage time off? There is a way, but oftentimes maybe I, as a leader, the way I've structured my day, I don't fully understand the pain points my team is coming to. So I think, Crystal, to your point, one, bringing up the issue, because sometimes leaders are just not aware. As much as I love surveys, I would also say don't leave everything to a survey. Like, you need to create that environment where that conversation can happen. If you have a recommendation, absolutely, because a lot of times, like, for somebody to put themselves in somebody else's shoes where they're not feeling that pain point, first you have to like figure out, okay, how do I empathize? How do I understand the situation? And then how do I try to come up with solutions to the situation, even though I'm not, like, it is so helpful to hear recommendations from someone in what they need. And I think especially when it comes to well-being, like here we have 75% of people say, I'm able to take days off when I feel the need to rest and recharge. I can't speak on behalf of every leader at QuestionPro, but I would find it really hard to believe that 25% of leaders, that somebody comes to them and says, I need a day off, and they're like, oh no, no way. You know, you work until you're burnt out. And then, you know, but are those conversations happening? Like, or is the person silently saying, like, I'm so overwhelmed with work, but I really do care about my work, so I don't want to take, like, how do we create that transparency? And also,
Oh no, I was just.
Oh, sorry, Erik. Oh, okay. I thought you guys were gonna jump in. I'm like, no. And there were like even things like, if you think about it, maybe this isn't quite as surprising, but like 65%. So the feeling that my performance is evaluated fairly, like I fully expected that to show up on like your productivity and your retention, but it shows up in well-being. And so one of the things that we're actually seeing in some of our research is that your performance at work and your well-being inside and outside of work are really highly related. And so when you're performing well, even though you might think like, oh, but you're probably so tired because you're working so much, you're not. Like, you have this energy because you're celebrating and you're thinking, I'm doing really well and this is great. And you go home and things are good. And so that to me was really eye-opening, because again, I realized that, like, wow, you know, this really impacts us holistically. So how do we dig into that, and how do we dig into it from different angles? And I think, you know, sometimes doing these different analyses, it's great to get validation for what you were thinking. Sometimes it's obviously even more interesting to get a surprise and say, that's something that I really, you know, we need to do a double click on, because I wasn't expecting that to also have an impact on well-being. So
yeah. What I find interesting is, like, and this is more interesting because it's our data, right? Like we are the people that this is about. So this is like slightly disturbing right now, but the 82% believe my manager cares about my well-being. And then the 75% believe they could take a day off. So like there's the disparate between those. Like they obviously know managers care. And they're like, I'm putting myself in that because I have a team of people. I'm like, guys, you know I care about you. Just ask for the day off.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, I think that's a great segue to the actions that we took on that data.
All right.
You know,
Look at that.
I know one of the actions was Crystal asking for an all-company day off. So good on you.
Actually, I just asked for my team to have a day off.
I know.
Look at the amazing ripple effect it had. So moving on to just a few highlights of things. So I know I've gone to too many conferences to count so far in my life, and a lot of times you go and you hear these big companies doing these amazingly innovative things, and they have these huge budgets, and so many times I'll hear people just kind of bummed and saying like, oh, that sounds amazing, but I could never do that. And so our purpose for sharing this is that we want to recommend some things that are very doable to you, some things that you feel like, okay, this is a good refresher, or I need to look at it this way, different way, or I hadn't thought about it, but it's definitely within reach. That was really our purpose of these highlights. So the first one, again, going back to career management, we, as Erik mentioned, put a platform in place several years ago. It was 100% because people wanted it. They talked about career advancement, and 100% results from that. One of the things that we are tracking, like I was mentioning, not unique to us, but worth highlighting again, is there could be more usage there. So people wanted for a way to have more transparency, to connect with their manager. And to me, like anything else, like a mentoring program, any relationship, it's a two-way street because it's something that we don't mandate. It's not something like, if you don't do this, you're going to be fired. We very strongly encourage it because we very much believe in it. So one of the things that we did in the last surveys, we actually asked an open-ended question like, hey, what do you think about the way this program's run? Like, what do you like about it? And what are your recommendations? And we realized that some people are like, what is that? We thought, oh no.
People loved it though. And I was like,
some people love it. Like,
I want to know who those people are that loved it because I want to go learn from them.
Well, it also, and Erik, like, I mean, when you and I first talked about it, and again, like, I come from like, oh my God, like PhD, we need to do all these things. And like, Erik was like, okay, Sanja, let's figure out what our starting point is. Let's build from that. Some of these ideas are great. They don't really make sense for us right now, but let's start to invest and let's build from there. And so, Erik, I know when you and I were first talking, I was kind of like, man, not everyone's using it. You were like, I thought it was great because some people I connected with, I didn't connect on this level before.
You know, I think these numbers are a little bit like 65% is disappointingly low. But I think the way I think about these things is, you know, it's an opportunity. Not everything is going to work for everybody. But we are providing a platform now for the people who are interested, both on the managerial side and the employee side, to do this. And if you're not providing the opportunity, you're not going to get the data. But I'm also accepting it. This might not work for everybody. I mean, this is my personal opinion, right? It might not work for everybody. It might not be the right feedback mechanism. But if I can get 65, 75%, that's pretty good. And it is light years where we were before. I think the other interesting thing about this initiative, we've been very, very clear from the beginning that this is not used to level your pay. This will not be used in any RIFs or reduction of force. You know, we've been very, very clear. It's not a performance management tool. And some of these things blur the edges, right? They're all software. Is it performance managers or is career management? It could be used as either. So we've also, I think, tried to approach these in a very sort of non-threatening way, right? This is not data that will, it's not data that will be used against you. This is simply to help us, foster conversations that can help you. So
and I think the biggest,
I've really pushed on my team too as we do it is like fill out if you don't put as much effort into it, I cannot know I don't have the data points to help you. right? It comes with all these prompts, and there's like, you'll have the people that fill out like paragraphs. So like, yes, love this. You put the time into this. And then you have like some people are like one sentence. And I'm like, okay, team, my guys. Like if it is like a two-way street, like managers need to put in as much into it and employees need to put into it too. And I think that is something I've been working on with my team a lot, is like, guys, I need you to, like, you have to put the inputs in if you want me to help you. I can't just like assume you want to like advance your career. I am very ambitious. Plot twist. Not everybody is. Like, and so like, I don't want to assume that you want to like become a VP of marketing. Like maybe you just want to be an individual contributor. Let's talk about it. But if you don't put those inputs into it, then it's like hard. But no, there were people that were like, we love this program. And I just was like, who are they? Come find me. I want to learn more about how you're using this because I struggled with it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is, to your point, it's education. I know for me, I had a very similar experience as you, that I went in, like I put so much information, and I looked at some of my team and I was like, dudes, come on. Now they didn't mind, went to my leader, but I took that stuff seriously. And so again, it's like expectation setting, understanding the value. Then once you like actually take action on it, people take it more seriously. And one of the pieces of feedback actually from the last survey was people wish there were more resources to actually help them with areas of career advancement, right? So they would say like, hey, I put this in, but what do I do? And that actually went into our second area of learning and development. And so we approach this in two different ways. One is continuing to give people an individual learning and development budget. And this is something we've been doing for years. And we've debated, like, do we do it? Because it kind of puts like the ownership on the employee. But I would say there are a couple of really strong benefits, and why I would recommend for maybe some of you who aren't doing this to consider it. One is that it really gives the employee autonomy to decide what do they individually want to develop. So it is completely up to them. Yes, they need to find a training or a course, but it is 100% in their hands. So it is 100% customized to them. And two, one of the biggest complaints I hear from organizations is we invested in an LD platform or a wellness or whatever kind of platform, and we're getting really low usage and it's really expensive. But the problem is if we pull it, we're going to get backlash from our employees, and not just the ones who are using it, but really everybody, because it's going to be perceived as being a resource taken away. So from a budget standpoint, this is not only beneficial to the employees to have an individual budget, but if somebody doesn't use it, it doesn't cost the company anything. Like we don't give everybody just money. They have to sign up for something and they get reimbursed. So if you're not going to use it, it's not going to cost us money. And if you do, great. You can do something that's very tailored to you. But then also we provided leaders with an L&D budget to be able to tailor things to their own groups. Because again, we have marketing, we have ops, we have sales, we have developers, we have customer success, we have more teams. Like it's very hard to find a training that's equally useful to every single business unit.
What? You mean marketing and developers couldn't do the same training? Wild.
Like, we tried, and everyone's like, this sucks. And so, and we tried. And that's like one thing Erik and I have gone back and forth in the years we've done this together. Like, we've tried things that haven't worked. We're like, people are going to take on, like every leader is going to do. And so we've learned from that. It's definitely been trial and error. So that's why we're also sharing this with you. We're not sharing. Maybe we need like a blooper wheel, Erik.
No, it's true. I mean, this has been one of our biggest challenges is activating kind of training and learning. And we've put some of our GMs and our business managers in charge of it in years past. And frankly, the ball gets dropped. It is, if you want like a kind of honest assessment, this has been probably the toughest one for us in terms of actioning. I do think that the pull system on the individual learning and training budget is really successful. As you mentioned, it allows people to kind of control their own destiny with it, without, ballooning the budget, which is the one who manages the budget here. I do appreciate. And then, I think instead of just asking our managers to run trainings, to give them some budget behind it, kind of similarly implements that pull system. So the problem with pull systems, though, is people can still just ignore it. It's not a push, right? For the management is saying, do this or there'll be consequences. It's like, here's a pot of money, go action it. And I think we've had pretty good success, although not 100% success. There are even people who with the pull system won't take advantage of the pot of money. put in front of them. So,
I mean, as someone who sits on both sides of that, right? Like I'm a manager, but also I'm an individual contributor. Like it's the pull system it makes sense in your mind. And like for some people, it's really easy to action. I will say that the individual L&D is not just I think the coolest thing about this pot of money, as Erik just said, is that it's not always just about what to make your job better. Like one of the girls on our team got Pilates certified, and that made her like, she's like started a small, like she teaches Pilates now. One of our graphic designers took like a lettering course, but then used that course to like, for her graphic design, but then turned it into our stickers, right? Like it's not just has to be for something work related. It's like any L&D that's going to make you a better person, which I don't know if we talk about very much, which we probably should, to be honest. And I think that's the coolest thing about it. But then there's also like, who wants to sit on, Erik and I talk about this a lot with this, like if you're going to do one, like do you want to sit on another Zoom call? Like it's like, oh, I want to like take a course, and it's just like sitting on another call. So Erik and I have gotten in great debates about the learning budget. But I think that like, at the end of the day, it's not just, it's like we know well-being is tied to how well we do at work.
Absolutely. Very potentially so.
Also, don't take Guia's Pilates class. You will die. Because I have done it.
Oh, now I kind of want to in a weird kind of way. Next time I'm making a written video. And then the last one, just for us to highlight, is this what we call Kaizen, the one-on-one conversations with leaders. And Crystal, actually, before where you were saying like, hey, I'd love to learn more about things that people like about the performance management. We found that we think as a leadership team, we're a pretty approachable bunch. Like we go like, me and Erik and Crystal by now, like, we seem like, hey, our door is open, come in. But people don't, like, unless you have an organized way, people won't do that as much. And to me, one of the things that I've personally found is when I connect with people, even when I was doing it anecdotally outside of Kaizen, I find out so much about what's going on across the organization and in a lot of different places where I can't physically be all the time. And that is so incredibly valuable. And even in some of those anecdotal situations, we found that we have a lot of blind spots, and we can take these opportunities to really learn from people and connect with people. And so we created this program that's literally a spreadsheet where every leader has a separate tab, and you have a week and you can sign up. There are a lot of fancy technologies that can do things similarly where they connect people. But even if you want to do it super on a budget, like literally we have a Google Sheet with tabs, and it's been very nice because it's another way to invite people to these conversations and connect people that you might not run into like day to day, or maybe you don't have projects with them, but you could still learn so much from them or understand their perspective on the business. I know, Crystal, I don't know if you want to share earlier, we're sharing a little bit about your original experience, like with Kaizen, and some people you were able to talk with, like, otherwise you wouldn't have crossed paths with. If you'd like to share.
I mean, I think it happened in like, because we've been doing it a few years, right? This isn't like we've done the Kaizen a few years in a row. And the first year was great. I like put myself in, you meet with Viv, you meet with Sanja. And I was like, oh, I've never talked to Shri, he was our head of product at the time. And I was like, I would never run into him in a Zoom call. Like we're never going to so we sat down and chit chatted for an hour, and like, that was the only time I probably ever talked to him, but it was great. Because then that one time when I needed help from DevOps, I was like, hey, sure, remember that one time we spent an hour together? But it also allowed me to like hang out with Sanket, who runs our survey product, and like really kind of like sit down with people who you're not going to just like overlap with in a Zoom call. Every once in a while, I'll like join one of Erik's like DevOps, like his admin RevOps call. And there's like 10 people on there. Like, I don't know any of these people. But it gives you that kind of opportunity to run into in a kind of scheduled way. But then like the next year I was a tab on it and nobody told me. So then you're kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I'm also now considered a leader. This is fine.
Surprise! Congratulations.
No, but I mean, I would agree. Like, this is an excellent lightweight way to to communicate and connect with people across the organization. You know, the career management was a heavy software lift. We had to implement it with a bunch of other systems. It took months to get off the ground. There's vendor assessments. There's annual recurring billing against it. This is easy to action, and it simply just promotes conversations between employees and different managers across the company who they might not otherwise interact with. And so I think it's just a great example of these things don't have to be complex or heavy to implement. The real issue here, though, is the commitment from the managers and the employees to make it happen. I had employees who signed up to chat with me and didn't show up to the call. I similarly missed some of the calls. So this, like most things, this comes down to commitment, and it's not going to be successful if it's kind of half-assed. So I think that's, if you're going to roll out something like this, the real thing is to make sure people are committed to it. It's easy to put your name in a spreadsheet, but to find the time and to make sure you do it is actually another issue. So it's not all freebie. It takes commitment to get these things done.
I know people made fun of all my directions at the top of my tab. And I was like, all the directions at the top of my tab are how to get on my calendar. That's phase one.
Yeah. And I would say, like, once you've had a conversation or two from both ends, like, you show up because you see value in it. Yeah. Like, at first it can get drowned out. You might not, but like, I've learned so many interesting things. And again, I've talked to a lot of people I would have not really crossed paths with. And I've personally, because you can talk about whatever you want. I've learned cultural things. I've learned in people's interests, like, and again, that it strengthens that bond that wouldn't maybe naturally happen when you're not, even when you're physically in the same place. Like, if you don't strike a conversation like that, it's really hard to initiate. So it's, it's a nice way to bring people together, again, with all the human potential errors and, pitfalls, but a lot of benefits too. So I know
one of the action items that's not on here that Erik alluded to when we moved to this slide was that, yes, we did advocate a really easy way to make your company feel happy for the day is give them a day off, unprompted.
Nothing beats surprise and delight. We do that. We periodically have surprise days off.
Yes. But sometimes leadership forgets to surprise and delight. So some people have to remind them.
Thank you, Crystal.
Hence the reason conversations. It gives you a structured way to remind.
I was really just asking for my team to have a day off. And then Erik was like, we should just give the whole company a day off. And I was like, okay, but like, make sure we get the day off.
Yeah, we did it. It is true. It's hard to follow through. It's hard. You get busy. You forget the things that matter. So I will be the first to admit that.
Well, and then one quick last slide, because I know we're running up on time. So one of the areas I just wanted to touch on that I think is like a gold mine of collaboration, and I just don't hear that many companies talking about it, is earlier this year, the QuestionPro team went to this incredible employee listening conference in Austin, Texas. And it was academics, practitioners, and technology providers. And we all talked about like our different projects with the whole goal is how can we all better collaborate, right? Like we're all have very similar interests, but oftentimes in our work, we can be relatively siloed. And for me, having a PhD previously, I'm a huge fan of research. I love academia. I think maybe in my future life, I will go into academia. And I had this incredible luck of sharing the lunch table with Michael Park, who's a professor at Wharton. And we started talking about different projects and how do you run surveys and psychological safety. And long story short, we partnered to do this incredible project at QuestionPro that Michael and his teammate Grace are running. That is so hugely helpful to us because we want to make sure our employees feel very comfortable sharing their voice, that they feel heard. We're going to dig into some of these areas of belonging that you saw came up in all of our different areas as opportunities to improve. And for Michael, it's incredible because one of the biggest challenges for academics is to get real organizational data. And so again, in my conversation with a lot of our clients, that's just not something that HR teams tend to really entertain or think of. So maybe as a slightly more innovative idea and an outcome from our survey, I wanted to mention that. Now, Michael is also going to join us for X Day, which is our
Let's
incredible,
go.
yes, annual conference. It's in Austin, Texas. It's on October 9th. He and I are going to be doing a fireside chat, digging more into his work, the importance of emotional intelligence, talking about a project that he's doing at QuestionPro. So all of you practitioners, all of you in HR and leadership roles will have very real practical things that you can take away to your organization. We will put in our follow-up to this webinar more information. You can use the code HOWDY if you want a complimentary pass for you and your team as a part of being on this webinar. We'd just really love to see you there, because we'll continue the conversation on, we'll have a whole track on employee experience. This is just going to be one of the sessions, but you'll absolutely, if you enjoyed this, what you saw today, we're going to be bringing in a lot of external experts. So you'll have just a ton of learning of what you can do in your employee listening and beyond.
Yeah, so fun. Thanks, you guys, for joining us. Thank you, Erik, for coming in. And guys, as a reminder, if you have any questions, just put them in the comments and we'll reply to them via offline, via an email, or what have you. We are so grateful to have Sanja here leading our program about, employee experience, not only building the software that does it, but making us learn it on the inside. I was thinking as soon as you said that, I was like, I never thought that I would work at a company where belonging mattered, right? That's just not something you think about when you think about your job. And so, it's really awesome that you and Erik, and Viv, shout out to Viv, he's not here, really care about that. And so if you also are curious about how to, get a seat at the table, connect with Erik on LinkedIn. I'm sure he could help you and
Let's do it.
advocate for your budget. But we'll drop a code for X Day in the comments section. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and we will see y'all later.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.